Hi everyone, welcome to the Third Torah Study, Lunch and Learn of the Spring 2025 semester. I wanted to talk about something relevant to the upcoming holiday of Pesach, Passover, as well as something relevant, I think very important that all lawyers need to know, even if they don't do contracts, especially Jewish lawyers, but it's a good topic because there's a lot of overlap. So there are two topics today, but this is really the same, and that is the sale of Chametz for Pesach and the idea of Hetter Iska. So we'll give an introduction to both, and we'll explain where the issue comes up in practical life and again, and for lawyers. So we'll start at page 1. It says, for 7 days, you cannot have any leaven, so'or, meaning any chametz, we call chametz in your house. Whoever eats chametz will be cut off. But again, the main point is you're not allowed to have it, not allowed to own it. And we know that on the night before Pesach, this year, the night early because it's Shabbos, but you check your house, and then after you check your house, you get up and you say, any chametz that I own, I nullify. So technically, if the simple, the straightforward way that everyone should do before Pesach is get rid of all the chametz. Okay, that's what Torah says. You can't have chametz in your house, and you check your house, and then you nullify, you throw it away. That's ideal. But we know that life isn't always ideal. So again, it's not like a new modern thing. So there's a story. It's brought in Tosefta, which is a Mishnaic source, that there was if someone comes into your house, a non-Jew who's allowed to have chametz, he is not bound by the laws of Passover, and he's walking in eating his pretzels. No problem. It's his. It's in your house. Doesn't bother me. But if he deposited it by you, then you have a problem because then you're responsible. On the other hand, if you say this is your corner, no problem, then it's not a problem because it's not my house technically. So there's a lot of laws of what do you do when life's not ideal. So now this is the point that's relevant. So far so good. We know you have to get rid of chametz in your house. What is it? How we have to define what's yours and what's your house. But now we have a that's all great. That's easy. But then there's something called real extenuating circumstances. A Jew and a Gentile are traveling on a ship, and a Jew had chametz in his hand. What's he going to do now? He's on the ship. Now, throw it overboard might be an option, but that's evidently not the option because he can't do that. So he's got a problem. So you let it sell it to the Gentile, and he may give it to him as a gift, and then return and buy it back from after Passover, as long as he initially gave it to him as an irrevocable gift. So here is the foundation. Again, this is a Mishnaic source. It's not like a modern source, but the Mishnaic source is you have a problem. I have chametz, which I'm not allowed to own, but I can't get rid of it and I can't destroy it. What do I do? The answer is you can sell it or give it to the non-Jew as long as it's 100% an actual real sale and gift. So and then the Maimonides, the Rambam codifies that. A Jew and a Gentile are traveling together on a ship. The Jew possesses chametz. When the 5th hour, which is when the time when chametz becomes forbidden starts, he should sell it to him and give it as a present. He may return it and buy it back from him after Pesach, as long as he gives it to him as an outright present. And this is the problem. The problem is, you could say, here, I am selling this to you. And we both know that I'm going to buy it back from you in 10 days. But it has to be real. But at the same time, we understand that it's not so real. And that's the problem. So it's clear that it has to be real. It has to be, because otherwise you can't fake out God. That's the assumption. Right? You can't fake him out. But on the other hand, there are legal ways to do something. Again, legal, I don't want to use the word fallacy, it's a wrong word. Legal or myth, I don't know what the word to use is. Legal definitions are real. Professor, what's a corporation? Right? Is it a real thing? Is there something called corporations? No, but it's a legal entity we create. It's not like a myth. Oh, corporation's a myth, right? It's not a fiction, but it's an entity we create. It's a legal reality. Legal realities are real, but you could also use them to be underhanded and try to trick God. That you can't do. So you have to make the sale. It has to be a real sale, but at the same time, you can be with devices that we know will eventually end with our result that we want, as long as it's a real sale. And that's been the tricky question throughout Jewish law how to arrange the situation. Okay? So if you take a look at the Shulchan Aruch, again, say that here I didn't have the English, we'll get to the English at the bottom in a second. If you, again, if you sold your Chametz to a guy before Pesach, even if you know that he's not, even when you know when he bought it, he's not going to use it, and you know that he's going to sell it back to you, it's okay. You're allowed to have that, as long as the reality is the reality, it's irrelevant, we know the result, but it has to be real. And without any conditions. It can't be, I'm only selling it to you if you give it back to me, because that's not real. Even though in some areas of halacha it is real, and that's a whole discussion in the Mishnah Berurah. Because normally, like we do that for an esrog, I say to you, I'm giving it to you as a present, but you have to give it back to me. But for chametz it doesn't work, because that's, for whatever reason, that's a whole debate if it really doesn't work or it only partially doesn't work. But because chametz is so important, it has to be a real sale, even though you can make the sale in a way that we know what's going to be at the end. And that we'll talk about how we do it. So, and now, eventually, as time progressed in Jewish history, there became more and more of a need for this sale. So here you have in the bottom, this is the Bach, you're talking about 16th, 17th century, 1600s, bottom of page 2, in this land, where most commerce is in whiskey. Jews in Eastern Europe in the 16th and 17th century had very limited economic opportunities for a bunch of reasons, anti-Semitism being chief amongst them. So one of the trades that the Jews did was they were in the whiskey business. They produced whiskey, they sold whiskey, they had the inns, they had the bars, whatever you want to call it, and that's a big problem. You can't get rid of all your whiskey, but you have to get rid of it. So what do? Again, especially those who hold a license. Again, back then you had to get a license from the governor, whatever the name of the person in charge would be, the landowner. Since it would be burdensome to write it. Now, here's the problem. Okay, so my storehouse has got all the whiskey, right? And now I want to sell it to the non-Jew. All good and fine. What makes it his? So the answer is, I have a better idea. So I'm not only going to sell it to him, I'm going to write a deed, right? Because again, if it had to be his, it has to be in his house. Okay, so I'll rent him the floor, I'll rent him that room. So here's the question. It's a very good question. Right? You should say, I'm assigning this room to you in exchange for the money you'll be giving me, even though I've not recorded a deed for this sale. So here's the problem. What's the problem? If I sell you my house and I don't transfer title and deed, is it your house? I took your money. Is it your house? Why? Because everyone lives in a country, and a state, and a municipality that has laws. So how do you so if I want to make my house yours, there's legal ways to do it. That's why you go to law school. You figure out what the legal way for me to transfer my house to you. You can give me we make a deal. Here, give me, thousands of dollars. You gave me the money. It's still not yours until you register it. So again, I want to make this room with the whiskey, the non-Jews. So what would the really legal way, according to the state, be? You have to go get a deed. You have to go to a lawyer. But no one does that. So, right? So that's the question. The Bach said it's not a problem. Well, we'll talk about more in a second. Still, one must give the non-Jew the key as well. So you have to give him the ability to get there, but you don't have to register it with the government. Right? And because if you don't, then the Gentiles are like, this is a joke. If you're not even giving me the key that I can get to it, right? Then it's a joke. Fine. Certainly, the Jew may not place a seal in the room so the non-Jewish person cannot enter, because that's a joke. It has to be, I'm selling it to you. I have to. So now, this is the question: how much of a sale makes using legal terminology and legal devices is real without having to go all the way and registering at a title officer? That's the question. This is the age-old question. So before we go to the next topic, I'm just going to take. If you've looked carefully at the, we'll get. Actually, should we skip ahead? No, let's stop here. No, not. So if you look at the picture on the today's flyer, which of course, I'm always proud of. Where's the picture? So the picture is the actual. There's a stamp. It's called stamp tax. This stamp is from the Hungarian 1700s. This was the stamp tax that every legal document had to have. So the rabbis asked the question: what if so does the sale of Chametz have to have that stamp? Okay, the rule is in America we don't have that in America. I don't know. Do you have that in America? I don't think you have that in America. That you have to pay a tax for every document filed. No, right? We don't like the stamp tax. That went out with the T. But in 1700, early 1700, Hungary, Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Habsburg Empire, you had to have a stamp on every document. So the rabbis wait a second. Who said the sale of chametz is real? There's no stamp on it. But on the other hand, I know and you know that I'm selling it to you. We all know we're doing this for religious reasons. But if it's not real, then it doesn't work religiously. But we don't really need it because we know at the end of the day what's going to be. So that's the question. How much legality do you have to build into something which you need to be legally binding even though you know you're not going to use it? That's a good question. This is the same question. So what was the 2 points? This is the same question as something called the Hetter Iska. This is something that I think everyone needs to know. Let's review the topic. We're on top of page 3. There is something called interest or usury. They're not synonyms, although they're very close to being synonyms. So again, today, how much is a mortgage today? 6%, 7%? A few years ago, it was 2%. Okay. How much is your credit card interest? How much is student loan interest? 8%. And credit card about 22%. So in traditional low interest, which is what we call interest, and high interest, we call usury. Meaning, usury is usually a very negative term. The Torah forbids all forms of interest, not only usury. Now, it actually makes a big difference how you translate the Hebrew. We could actually have a whole discussion on the different interpretations, especially Christian and the Catholic Church versus the Jewish, how to translate the words. Does the Torah forbid usury or interest? So the Jewish tradition is that we forbid any interest. So if I give you $100 for $100.50, that's forbidden. Forget about if I give you $100 and asking you back for $150. In Torah law, there's no difference giving you $100 and asking back for $100.50 or asking back for $150. Both are forbidden. And that's called ribis. That's the word we use because it increases your money. And but if you take a look here, top of page 3, do not exact advance or accrue interest. Fear your God. Let your kin live by you at your side as such. Meaning, it is not, again, you're allowed to rent your car. You can rent your horse. You can rent out your shovel. You can rent out your plow. Money you're not allowed to rent out. Money you have to lend. Now, this was great before we lived in a real commerce and capitalistic society. When I had a cow, and you had a cow, and you had your field, and you had your vineyard, and you had, right? So, but at some point, even a farmer has got to spend all the money. He's got to advance money for something to plant, and then he'll only make money 6 months later, right? You plant in the spring, and you start selling in the fall. So you need there's a capitalist system. You need money flowing the whole time, and that's why we borrow money. So there's a need. So it became a need. So, but even before that, if you take a look at so again, Pasuk 38 says, and the appending to the idea of don't take interest is I am Hashem your God who took you out of Egypt. We'll see Rashi in a second. But what's important is that if you look at in Deuteronomy and Dvarim, it says specifically, don't charge interest to your brother. Le'achicha, to your brother. And it says specifically, le'nachri, to the stranger, the non-Jew, you're allowed to. Okay, and that's an important point. We'll get to it in a second. But just to point out, even in Yecheskel, Ezekiel, meaning in the prophets, you have also basically a cursing or a denigrating of those who lend money and interest. And Rashi even says, why is there connection to the being taken out of Egypt to Mitzrayim? Because what the last of the 10 plagues was, God killed all the Egyptian firstborn. And who did he not kill? He didn't kill the Jewish firstborn. So God says, I made sure to make a difference between Jewish firstborn and Egyptian firstborn. So I will also I will sniff out the fakers. Why? Because we just said that I cannot lend my brother with interest. So if I say, listen, I can't give you $100 for 105. But you see this $100? It's not really my money. It's really John's money. I'm just an agent of lending John's money to you for 100. Say, are you allowed to pay him $105? Yeah. So in other words, Hashem says, I know the true facts of this matter, and I will exact punishment from him who lends money to an Israelite, saying that it belongs to a non-Jew. In other words, one of the ways you could trick God is by, I lend you $100, I expect $105 in return, but I say, it's not my money, it's his. Okay? And that's a fake. And God says, don't worry, I got it. I'm in charge here. I can tell who was the Egyptian and the Jewish firstborn, and I can tell if it's really your money or not. But we all know that you need commerce. So people have been looking for different ways to get around it. So there are forbidden ways to get around it. Have you learned what a kickback is? What's a kickback? Kickback?
I think there's different definitions.
Give me one.
Like a party.
What?
Like a party, they call them kickbacks as well, or like kickback.
Give me an example, like a modern world example of a kickback. That means, let's say you're in Turo here, you're in charge of buying tables. So you could buy tables from 5 different companies, right? So you go to each company and say, if I bring you the contract from Turo, what are you going to do for me? Right? And one guy says, listen, I heard you need tables at home. If you give me the contract, I'll make sure 2 tables appear in your house. Is that legal or illegal? Is it ethical? Well, listen, if you're in charge of purchasing for Turo, right? So you spend millions of dollars, none of your own money. So you go to Costco and say, listen, that's a good question, by the way. Costco gives 2% back. It's a kickback, right? So can you go to Costco and say, listen, I'm coming here, but I want the 2%? Why not? Because Turo's paying for it. So Turo's about right. So what if you go to Costco and say, listen, I'm coming here and spending $1 million coming here, not my own money, but you got to give me a parking. When I come myself, I still want a parking spot up front. Because I could go to Walmart, or I can go to, what? So these are, right? These are, and this is, by the way, Professor, what field of law deals with these questions?
Not sure.
I'm not sure either, but I know people have gone to jail for this. What? For kickbacks. That's what for government, especially these things. Yeah, I don't know what field of law it is, but people have gone to jail. It's a part of fraud. Okay, so what if you go? So imagine if I say to you, "I'll lend you $100. I'm only charging you $100 because again, I can't charge you interest. We're both Jewish, but I'm making a kiddush to Shabbos, and I would love to have soda at the kiddush. We're good? We're good. Okay, right? I didn't charge you interest.
Is that allowed?
No, it's not allowed. Right, so it says here, even if the borrower tells him the time the ribbis he's giving him as a gift, I want to give you a gift. Now, again, we understand. So ribbis is real, and the rabbis knew of all the tricks. Now, very interestingly, in Islam, again, all 3 monotheistic biblical religions have this prohibition. So if you're a from Catholic, a Protestant, if you're from Muslim, or you're from Jew, you have this problem. Islam has a very big problem. That till this day they have this problem because they follow the Quran, they follow Sharia law. But so again, one of the ways that Islam gets out of it, it's not a Jewish way because we think it's forbidden. Can I rent this to you? Can I rent you my? No, not myself. Can I rent you my phone? Yeah. You don't have a phone. You forgot your phone today. I'll lend it to you for $10 an hour. We agree that's okay? Yeah. So I have a better idea. I'm going to lend you some money. I can't lend you money, right? We're Jewish. We can't do it. Would you like to? I have an idea. I'd like to buy your phone for $100. Okay. So I give you $100. You give me your phone. Oh, is this your phone? Would you like it back for $105? Yes, you would because it's your phone. So how much money and you ended up having $100 for a day. I got $105 from you. You got your phone back, and everyone's happy. If that would be true, again, you're allowed to buy and sell for any price. So if you buy low and sell high, that is 100% real. That's not ribis. That's not interest. But if I buy your land for $100 and then you have to buy it back at 110, that's so. According to Islam, that's okay, even though it's a fake. It's a total fake out. You're allowed to do it. Judaism says no. You're not really buying and selling. But if you really did, if you really did, and made it a real sale, it'd be okay. Because again, I gave you $100 for your land. You bought your land back for 110. At the end of the day, what happened? I got 110. You had your $100 for a day. But it had to be a real sale. Okay? So these are the very important laws. So we're on page 4 now. So in the Gemara already spoke about there's a problem. Not a problem. Let's say you want to sell on Amazon. So you have to buy $1 million worth of product, and you hope to sell it for $1,200,000, right? That's how you do business. But where did you get the first million from? You have to borrow it from the bank, right? So in the old days, if you take a look at the chart on the bottom, let's use easier numbers, $100. There's a problem. If I lend you $100, then I can't get any profit because that'll be interest. If I give you my money to use, you might just run away with it because he said, "Oh, I lost your money. It was a bad investment." So the rabbi said, they talked about it's a very simple way. When I give you $100, really 50 is the deposit. You're using my money, and 50 is a loan. So the loan again, let's say I gave you $100 and you did business and you made 120. How much now? You have to give me some back, right? But the problem is, if you give me anything extra for the loan, that's a problem because I can't charge you interest. But if my money, which I deposited by you, right? You can give me profit because my money made the money. You were just working for me. So this is what the Gemara talks about as half loan, half deposit. If you take a look at the chart on the bottom of page 4, imagine there's $100, 50 is a loan, 50 is a deposit. Everyone makes, so then there's a $20 profit. $10 of the profit are for the loan, and $10 of the profit are for the deposit. So I'm not allowed to take any extra money back for the loan, but I'm not allowed to take extra money back for the deposit. So at the end of the day, I made $10 profit. That's okay, because it's on the half that was the deposit. That's how the Gemara talks about it. Rabbis in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s realized that to make sure that commerce flows, that they're going to structure every loan that way. So when you come to me and you want to sell on Amazon, and I give you $1 million, you have to write a contract. And that's the point here. The point here is, and that's why it's connected to Chametz. If I say, half of this is a deposit, it's a joke. So I have to give you $1 million and say, listen, of this $1,500,000 is my money that I'm investing in you. $500,000 is a loan. So now, really, at the end of the period, he goes, here's your $500,000. The loan, I have to give you exact money back. Whatever you invested for me, you'll give me payments. Not interest. You'll pay me back. So what the rabbis did was they said like this: I don't trust you in business that much. I don't know what you're going to make. I'll make you a deal. I'll give you money for 7%. What's that? That's a loan with interest. It's a problem. So I'll say no. Here's really $500,000. You have to give back no matter what. Exact, not a penny more. The other $500,000, I get half the profits. But I don't want to be your accountant. I don't want to look into your business. If you give me 7%, we'll call it even. Really, you should only give me half of the profits. Or if you lost money, I don't get anything. But I have a better idea. We'll make a deal. Give me 7%, and we'll forget it. We'll get rid of our previous deal. Really, it's structured as 50% deposit, 50% loan. And you only have to give me the profits on my half. But since it's too difficult, and since you want the money anyway, I'm willing to forgive all of my loan and my deposit if you give me 7% a year. Is that acceptable? And the answer is yes. That was the Hetter Iska. So we asked the rabbis, is it really acceptable if it's not enforceable? Here you have in the second handout, if you're interested, right? In the second handout, you have all the different court cases, mostly in New York, that dealt with these issues. But before we even go there, take a look at page 5. Well, actually, just for the fun of it, look at page 7. Because everyone, you've all heard of Rocket Mortgage. Sorry, page 8. You all heard of Rocket Mortgage? I imagine you all heard of Rocket Mortgage? No? Okay, it's one of the mortgage companies. Rocket Mortgage is owned by Jewish people. So now I have a problem. If I, Baruch Fogel, Orthodox Jew, get a mortgage from Rocket Mortgage Jews, I can't pay them interest. So can you imagine if you had a mortgage without interest? That would be great. Who wouldn't want a mortgage without interest? But Rocket Mortgage is not giving you a mortgage without interest. But they have a problem. So look this is what if you're Jewish, this is what you sign. I am Jewish. And this is from their website. And wish to obtain a mortgage with Rocket Mortgage. Does Rocket Mortgage have a Hetter Iska that complies with the laws of Ribbis? Yes, it does. How does it work? For any mortgage loan that made to you by Rocket, as detailed on the note and all the mortgage documents that may violate the law of Ribbis, the mortgage loan will instead be structured as an investment. So if you're Jewish and you go to Rocket Loan and they give you money, $1 million to buy a house, they're not lending you money. They are investing in your property. They are not lending you money because they can't charge you interest. In exchange for the funds, you will manage their real estate because again, it's their house and they're depositing and they're investing with you or on the investments and Rocket Mortgage will share in any profits and losses. So let's say you buy a house today, 2025, and the market tanks. So now your house is worth less than it was 5 years. In 5 years. 5 years is worth less than it is today. So you go to Rocket Mortgage and say, Rocket Mortgage says, you're right, we have to share in your loss. Can you imagine going to the bank and saying, sorry, my mortgage is underwater, but it's your investment, it's not my problem. So here it says, under no circumstance will Rocket Mortgage have any liability above the actual funds advanced. Meaning, they're not going to lose money. They're not going to have to pay out any money. But they're willing to say that you don't have to pay us. If you make all your payments as provided in the note, then the ISKA terminates and all profit losses may be retained by you. And the ISKA will terminate when Rocket Mortgage sells your mortgage to a non-Jewish, meaning to a loan to someone else. What does this show us? That there's actually, you have to know how to write a contract. This was written by a bunch of lawyers, Orthodox Jewish lawyers, who figured out a way to use the laws of Hetter Iska in a way that Rocket Mortgage can lend people money. So it says here, if you are Jewish, it says it. If you ready, and here you have Cross River Bank. Cross River Bank is a Jewish-owned bank based in New Jersey. I have their whole Hetter Iska here. I mean, it's quite long, and I don't do contracts, and neither does Professor Lewin, I'm sorry. But if you take a look from the bottom, page 6, all the way to the top of page 8, so you get 2 pages of how they. Again, when you go to Citibank and you give them $100 and you get 4%, no problem. Citibank's not Jewish. But when you go to Cross River Bank and you give them $100, they can't give you any money. So the answer is they wrote a Hetter Iska. Really, every time you deposit money in Cross River Bank, they're investing in you. It's a deposit. It's not a loan. All of these things. And the question is it the problem that rabbis have to deal with, and that's what these 3 pages are. Rabbi J.D. Bleich, one of the premier thinkers, I think a professor emeritus at Cardozo Law School, and a Rosh Hashiva, of course, he writes, he brings all the quick case law, which we're not going to go through, but I wanted you to have it as future lawyers, the case law where it was challenged in court. Imagine I lent you $1 million. And we write a Hetter Iska. So what does that mean, that Hetter Iska? It's an investment. So now you lose all the money. Sorry, right? And you're going to be, I'm not paying you back. And look, we wrote a Hetter Iska. So, so I go to court and say, of course I was lending him money. I was just joking with the Hetter Iska because I'm religious. You think I really was depositing the money in him? But you signed a contract that says it's a deposit. So, in other words, I want to use my religion and I want to say, I did it for religious reasons, but it wasn't real. So then you'll say to me, wait a second, it wasn't real, then it's not religious. So I go, listen, you just lost my $1 million. So I'll worry about religion tomorrow. Give me my $1 million back, right? So this is a real question. This has happened over and over again. Because when it comes to money, all of a sudden people are not as religious as they were the day before. So is it enforceable in court? And if it's not enforceable in court, then how is it ever good in the first place? And that's the same question we have in Mechiras Chametz, with selling the Chametz. If you're writing a contract, which is not enforceable, so it's not a contract. It's not a contract, then it's not a sale. It's not a sale, then it didn't do anything. Or is there a gray area where on one hand, we all agree in Jewish law it's a sale. We agree that we consider it binding, but it might not be binding in court. So then, how do we view that? But we agree that me and you will both be religious. Especially with the sale of the Chametz. It's only 9 days, 8 days, 9 days. I don't really want the Chametz. He knows he doesn't want the Chametz. Torah, by the way, just as an aside, for the shir, if anyone wants to sell their Chametz, I'm a rabbi, I'll help you sell the Chametz to a non-Jewish person. So I do it together with Torah University. Torah University, I don't know if you're aware, not just this building, is loads of buildings with loads of Chametz everywhere. So, and this is like big institutions have this problem. It's your nursing home empire. You have 50 buildings, and you're serving Chametz every day during Pesach. So you sell it to the non-Jew. So you bring in John Smith from the street and say, I'd like to sell you all my Chametz. It's worth $50 million. Give me a $10 deposit, and then come back to me with $49,999,999.90 in 10 days. And is that real? It's a joke. It's a joke. Torah University and Yeshiva University and all big companies actually are very stringent on this matter. And that is, they get a loan guarantee. If the Gentile, we promise him we'll get investors for him. We'll get him the money. Because otherwise it's a fake. Otherwise it's a joke. So the Gentile has to be able to, again, let's say I sell it for the 6 of us, 7 of us, 10 of us in the room. So, okay, how much Chametz do we all have? $1,000? Okay, he'll come up with $1,000 for my Cheerios. But if I tell him, you're buying I'm the rabbi of a big community, 1,000 members of my shul, they're each selling, $1,000 worth of booze in their, everyone's got not tequila, scotch and beer. So, right, 1,000 times 1,000 is $1 million. He doesn't have $1 million. He's not buying $1 million worth of scotch. So you have to make it real, or do you not? The question of Hetter Iska and the question of Chametz is the like. We need to make legal sales that we know we're never going to enforce, but at the same time it has to be legal. And that's a very important shayla. I wanted to introduce it for lawyers. For rabbis, I have to know about the laws of selling chametz. For lawyers, you have to know about Hetter Iska. It's very important. Any transaction between two Jews with money or with interest, they'll write a Hetter Iska. They have to write it correctly, and it has to be at least enforceable and usable in court, otherwise it's not real. And otherwise speak to your local Orthodox rabbis. I thank you for joining me, and thank you again for joining us for the third Torah Study, the spring 2025 semester.